Pawn Star's guest says it's all about the Benjamins after getting more money than she expected. In a world where people are constantly looking to turn their old items into quick cash, few places have captured the public's imagination quite like Pawn Stars. The hit History Channel show, set in the heart of Las Vegas at the world-famous gold and silver pawn shop, has become synonymous with high-stakes negotiations, eccentric characters, and surprising appraisals. Over the years, countless guests have walked through its doors, hoping to sell or pawn anything from vintage guitars to rare historical artifacts. Sometimes those hopes are dashed when an item turns out to be worth far less than expected. Other times, however, the opposite happens. Guests walk away stunned by how much their item is truly worth. One such moment recently left both the audience and the cast of Pawn Stars buzzing with excitement as a guest discovered her seemingly ordinary item was actually worth far more than she ever imagined. The episode in question opens with a woman in her early 30s stepping into the shop. She's dressed casually, carrying a small duffel bag that appears to contain just a few folded pieces of paper. As she approaches Rick Harrison, the show's co-owner and central figure, she explains that she's brought something unusual, several old $100 bills, known colloquially as Benjamins due to Benjamin Franklin's portrait on the note. Rick listens politely as the guest explains that she found the bills tucked away in a box of old family memorabilia after cleaning out her late grandfather's attic. She says she wasn't sure if they were valuable, but thought it might be worth checking them out. Rick nods and tells her he'll need to take a closer look before making any kind of offer. What follows is a familiar scene for longtime viewers of Pawn Stars. Rick calls over his son, Corey Harrison, and sometimes the third-generation pawnbroker, Austin Chumley Russell, to examine the item while discussing its potential value. In this case, though, the focus isn't on a rare coin, a Civil War-era weapon, or a signed celebrity photograph. It's on paper currency. Corey takes one of the bills and holds it up to the light, inspecting the watermark and security thread. He then pulls out a magnifying glass and examines the serial numbers, the color shifts, and the fine print along the edges. After a few moments of quiet study, he looks up at Rick and says, "Dad, this could be big." The camera cuts to a close-up of the bill under a special light, revealing faint holographic elements embedded in the paper. It becomes clear that these aren't just any $100 bills. They're part of a limited series of redesigned notes issued by the U.S. Treasury in 2013, which included new anti-counterfeiting measures and unique design features. But more importantly, some of the bills had printing errors or variations that made them highly collectible among numismatist currency collectors. Rick explains to the guest that while most modern $100 bills are only worth face value, certain rare editions can fetch hundreds or even thousands of dollars depending on condition, rarity, and demand. He tells her that the specific combination of serial numbers and misprints on some of the bills in her possession makes them particularly desirable to collectors. At this point, the guest begins to realize that what she thought was a routine visit to the pawn shop may have turned into something much more significant. Her eyes widen as Rick and Corey lay out the different bills and begin estimating values for each one. One bill, for example, has a double-printed serial number, a mistake that occurred during the printing process. Another has a missing ink blot in the corner, making it a misalignment error. Yet another shows a slight color variation due to a misspeed during production. Each of these flaws, while insignificant to the average person, adds considerable value in the collector's market. As the breakdown continues, the guest starts pacing nervously, clearly overwhelmed by the revelation that her grandfather's forgotten stash of $100 bills might be worth far more than face value. Rick assures her that while the bills are still legal tender, selling them as collectibles would net her a much higher return. Eventually, Rick offers her a total sum for the entire collection. The number shocks her so much that she repeats it back to him, just to make sure she heard correctly. Rick confirms, and the guest clutches her chest in disbelief before bursting into laughter. "It's all about the Benjamins," she exclaims, referencing the slang term for $100 bills popularized in pop culture, especially in music and movies. The phrase gets a chuckle from Rick and the rest of the team, who appreciate the irony of the situation. As the cameras roll, the guest signs the paperwork and walks out of the store with a check in hand and a story to tell for the rest of her life. To understand why the guest's find was so valuable, it helps to know a bit about how currency collecting works. While most everyday bills are used strictly for transactions, certain rare or unusual examples can become prized collectibles. Here are a few reasons why. Mistakes happen even in the most controlled environments, and the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, BEP, is no exception. Errors like misaligned ink, double-stamped serial numbers, missing text, or incorrect alignment of printed images can all make a bill stand out. These mistakes are often subtle, but to collectors, they represent a unique piece of history and a chance to own something truly one of a kind. Every dollar bill has a unique serial number, and certain sequences are more desirable than others. For instance, low-numbered bills like 000001, repeating numbers such as 12,345,678, or bills with star notes, used to replace defective ones during printing, can command high prices among collectors. When a bill is printed incorrectly, it is replaced with a star note, which has a small star symbol next to the serial number. These are rarer than standard bills and often more valuable. Occasionally, bills come off the press with incorrect colors or faded ink. These anomalies can create visually striking differences that appeal to collectors. Some bills are valuable because of their age or the era in which they were printed. Older designs, discontinued denominations, or bills featuring notable figures can be sought after by historians and collectors alike. This particular Pawn Stars episode struck a chord with audiences not just because of the monetary windfall, but because it tapped into a universal experience. The thrill of discovering unexpected value in something you thought was ordinary. For many people, going through old belongings, especially those inherited from relatives, can feel like a chore. Dusty boxes, outdated electronics, and yellowed documents often seem like clutter rather than treasure. But every now and then, someone stumbles upon something extraordinary hidden in plain sight. That's what makes shows like Pawn Stars so compelling. They remind us that history is all around us, tucked away in attics, basements, and garage sales. And sometimes all it takes is a second glance or a trip to a famous pawn shop to uncover real value. The guest reaction also highlights the emotional side of these discoveries. When she first entered the shop, she likely expected to leave with a few $100s at most. Instead, she walked away with enough money to make a meaningful difference in her life, whether that means paying off debt, saving for the future, or simply enjoying a financial boost. Her spontaneous use of the phrase, "It's all about the Benjamins," underscores the surreal nature of the moment. What started as a simple errand became a once-in-a-lifetime experience, one she'll undoubtedly share with friends and family for years to come. While not everyone will stumble upon a trove of rare currency in their grandparents' attic, there are a few key takeaways from this Pawn Stars segment. Before tossing old papers, boxes, or collections, it's worth taking a closer look. You never know what might be hiding in your home. Whether it's coins, stamps, comic books, or currency, knowing the basics of collecting can help you recognize valuable items when you see them. If you suspect you found something valuable, getting it appraised by an expert is crucial. Pawn shops like the one featured on Pawn Stars can provide insight into whether your item is worth more than its face value. Sometimes the most valuable items aren't the flashiest or the most obvious. Even a stack of old $100 bills can hide a secret worth uncovering. The Pawn Stars episode, featuring the guest who unexpectedly profited from a collection of rare $100 bills, serves as a reminder that value is often subjective and sometimes hidden in plain sight. What seemed like a mundane visit to a pawn shop turned into a life-changing moment, thanks to a combination of luck, knowledge, and timing. As the guest walked out of the shop with a smile on her face and a check in her pocket, viewers were reminded of the enduring appeal of Pawn Stars. It's not just about the money, but about the stories behind the objects we collect, inherit, and sometimes forget about. And in the end, whether it's a rare coin, a vintage guitar, or a handful of misprinted Benjamins, the thrill of discovery is what keeps fans tuning in week after week.